Hey guys, this is Zach with Team Covenant. I'm here with Robert, and we have another extremely special treat. We have the CEO of Fantasy Flight Games, Christian Petersen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Hi, everyone.
For those at home, I know that you're not necessarily the kind of guy who wants all the spotlight or wants to be out in front all the time. But can you give us a little snippet of who you are and why it matters that why you maybe matter in the tabletop gaming industry?
Well, I hopefully I'm a cog in the wheel that is Fantasy Flight.
Sure.
We all matter here. Why am I here? Maybe it's a different question, but it may make sense. I mean, I'm a lifelong gamer.
Yeah.
I'm the guy when I played games as a kid would always have to read the rules and figure them out and make the variants, and in an age before the internet, make up our own answers to whatever could have been a problem with them. And always sort of dreaming about, maybe I would do it that way or this way, or, I really love this game, but I wish it looked better, if I did this, I would do that.
Or this rule isn't very good, I'll change it.
Right, so there was always, that aspiration, which I think we all have, and so I hope from the core place that our core audience, our main audience, the gamer, knows that that's who we really are.
Yeah.
We're not somebody who came in and said, "Oh, this is a really good investment strategy to go into this little area." I mean, we think it is a great place to be, but
Sure.
but it really comes from a place of passion and trying to create products that we want to play ourselves.
Sure. And just so everyone's clear, you started Fantasy Flight Games?
I did.
And you've built it up, and you are the CEO, so you
I
do all that.
am by the hanging on by my nails, right? Hanging on. Having a tiger by the tail.
Awesome.
It's a phenomenal operation. As you know, we have our World Championship here this weekend, and I'm in awe of all the work that goes into it by our staff. Our OP guys, our marketing guys, in particular in this particular section, and they deserve a lot of credit. I get to have these nice interviews sometimes, but really there's a lot of credit that goes out to a lot of people here.
Yeah, they're working really hard. It's really obvious.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we were lucky enough to interview you last year, me and Robert, same
I remember.
Yeah, and we were
fun.
really happy about that. So in the past year, it seems like it's gone by so fast, but what has changed for you guys in the past year? What's exciting, what's new, what's changed, what's on the horizon?
Well, last year was actually a year that we considered a rebuilding year, not because our team was necessarily but not performing, but we in the year 2012 and 2013 to some degree we had these wonderful successes with Netrunner and X-Wing and a number of other things, and so we really spent a lot of time internally, operatively, and even in our development, focus on those games and make sure that we weren't outdistancing our successes by just adding more and more stuff, so we really grew our teams. We learned a lot about ourselves, learned a lot about those games, and so in the 2012-2013 season, we didn't have a significant amount of brand new product. Of course, it takes us at times a number of years to actually get a new product out.
Yeah.
But then since then, we sort of geared up to really come up with some really interesting new product that we are completely excited about. And so this year to us has really been the ability for us to reveal some of the stuff we've been working on and really saying, hey, yeah, we have really exciting things going into the future, and we also spent the time to build the infrastructure and the talent to maintain games like Netrunner and X-Wing and Conquest and Lord of the Rings LCG and all these games that we are committed to supporting.
Yeah, so you don't collapse under the success. Under the weight of success.
Right. I mean, there is. I mean, we produce a lot of different products. It takes a lot of organization, a lot of attention to detail. We have a lot of great staff, and they work really hard, and they also need support. They need to understand where to go and what to do. And sometimes we do a great job of that. Sometimes we don't. We had to find some time to make sure that we could operate efficiently, and not just internally, but also just make sure that we weren't overwhelming our own communication with these successful games that we had.
Sure.
We want to have a clear message, and we think we got that established. And so now we're really excited about the new stuff we have coming out. And we announced a lot of really cool stuff. We got more stuff coming, but
we did announce some really cool stuff.
We've got just phenomenal stuff coming up. We announced Imperial Assault. We announced Star Wars Armada, which is a game that I worked myself on a bit. We announced XCOM, which really for us pushes a whole other envelope that we've been working on for a number of years, trying to come up with the right concept for how to add these ubiquitous digital devices into our experience and do it in a way that wasn't gimmicky or overwhelming.
Sure.
And so we're really excited about having the stamina now to really do a good job. I mean, we hope, obviously, everybody out there, are free to judge. Yeah. And to have the stamina to really support what we think are great existing games and to come up with a whole other fleet of really exciting new stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you also, I want to add, you launched Conquest. Don't want to put 40K out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No.
That's an important launch.
Yeah, no, I know.
Recently
Yeah,
happened.
Conquest is absolutely very, very important. I mean, that was our most successful launch of an LCG ever. I mean,
it's crazy.
Amazingly, it's just amazing. We're at a third printing right now, and that's within 6 weeks. I mean, that's before the first pack has even arrived. And that was a game that I'm really proud of those guys. I mean, this is an example of where shows where FFG has come to, because the development time for that game exceeded my patience even. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're all about really developing games over a long time, and this game, they've done such a great job. It took a really long time to do, to the point where I'm like, we got to get this game out. But even though I may have felt that way, we were somehow able to gel it in as an organization and get that game out in a way that I'm very proud of. And I'm very proud of it, and it's in the sense that, man, they were right. This game, this extra 6 months or whatever this game got, they were right. I learned something, and that's always great.
Yeah, and I think that hints at, FFG. You talk about building this structure, the capacity to handle even more success and keep growing, and I think that hints at something I kind of want to get into, which is, you talked about you want to give games time in the design process to put out a good product, and I think it's a mentality that comes through in everything you guys do, right? Like, you have really good art, you have really good production values, your games are really great, they keep getting better.
Thank you.
And I'm curious for you, how do you see Fantasy Flight? There are a lot of publishers of tabletop games,
right?
And how do you see Fantasy Flight fitting into the industry? And what makes you guys, I guess, what are things that might make you different than most other companies? As an example, right? Like, a lot of companies might just want to put games out really fast, but you guys are all about the quality. So you spend the time and you make it right.
We certainly try. We hope that people will agree. But like any publisher, we make mistakes. We've made mistakes in the past, and we'll probably make mistakes in the future. We do a number of things now that we hadn't done in the past, which are really significantly have improved our quality. I think everybody who works here will agree that we had taken some extra time and some extra effort to try to take these games to the next level. I call them baking them a little bit longer. And it's not to say sometimes that even I'm worried if they're burning in the oven, right? Oh my God, it's just this thing done right, done it yet.
Marinate, right?
Exactly. So the some of the things we've done is obviously to try to create that balance between when we learn a game needs a bit longer and sort of give that freely, but then also keep in mind that if something, those needs to ship, right? Yeah. So that's the eternal balance between a creative business or a movie, somebody making a movie, and the director says that the cut that's in the cinemas is never his final cut, or you can always keep up the development of something. What we've tried to do is to install a whole series of checks and balances, which may seem obvious, but when you cover that many categories and as many different products, and we want to do them as well as we do, it's quite complicated, and it's quite taxing on staff, and we're still learning how to do that well and how to not sometimes get a little too busy, Yeah. But one thing we're doing, for example, that I think is unique to us is that we actually do betas of all of our games. Now, a beta is not a unique phenomenon. Other industries will do it, but we actually, I think, from a first in our industry, we actually print a small print run of a game, early. You may even have seen one yourself. It has a big beta sticker on it, or a big beta logo on it. It's actually mostly the final game, usually the actual final game.
Yeah.
And that gets printed, and in a very small quantity gets sent out to a number of blind testers.
As a final check.
Yeah, and then that actually adds another anywhere from 2 to 3 months onto onto development process. Yeah. And that has been very successful for us. It's obviously a very expensive concept to do, because you can imagine if your business had to delay everything by about 2 to 3 months, that's a 1/4 of a whole year that instantly is basically invested into pure quality.
And just waiting.
Well, there's the waiting. But it's not just sending them out. It's a communication with people that are getting them, and it's taking feedback. And on occasion, we've actually taken a game and we've completely retracted it on the basis of a beta. So
like just canceled it.
No, we haven't. We've 2 occasions we've actually taken the game and saying, you know what, this was actually not good enough. There was definitely some issues here. Sometimes they're very practical issues, and those are usually solved very easily. They just smooth along. And sometimes there's some real legitimate major issues which really shouldn't be caught at that stage, but we did catch them, and that's great, right? And that's a process that we do that we're very proud of, and we try to do as much as we possibly can with everything that we have.
Yeah. Well, I think the quality certainly shines through, without question.
Thank you.
And I mean, it's interesting seeing some of the decisions you guys have made in a positive light for me, but I don't feel like you guys always take safe moves.
Right.
And that's something, you don't, it seems obvious now looking back at, like the LCG model.
Yep.
A non-collectible card game. It's like, yeah, of course that would work. But there's a reason no one else did that. So I'm curious, get into maybe the core values that guide FFG and give them their place in gaming. I know quality is one for sure. And you guys don't just do the safe thing because it's easy and it makes money. Is there anything else, and if you can speak to the not taking the safe move as well, but is there anything else as well that might be the driving force behind you guys?
Other than just to focus on quality and not necessarily always taking the easy road.
Yeah. And you can talk about that too.
I think there's a desire to be diverse, to try to look at the industry from a lot of different angles. Not doing on one genre game only. That we try to represent the hobby as a whole. Really, I mean, I love the hobby game store. I love walking in. I love the smell. I love the whole concept of it. And we believe that via vision, or the people that we hire and their vision, that we can contribute our particular brand of hopefully excitement and color to every major category. Sure. That are in those stores. So a sense of diversity, a sense of passion, a sense of quality, which obviously is not for us to judge in the end, but for the customers.
Yeah.
Always trying to improve, right? I mean, this is something we talked about maybe also last year. Is that we are not perfect, and we typically we know before everybody else when we made a mistake, and we will always try to do things a little bit better. And so that's when you come into Gen Con every year, if you come, you hopefully your experience next year will be a little bit better.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing we've had an example at Gen Con, we've had problems with lines and long lines waiting to get in and get our stuff, which is just an amazing thing.
It's a good
for a business,
problem.
right? It's really amazing. But these poor people have come all the way from all over the world, come to Gen Con, and here they are standing in the line for hours, on end. And the first couple of years, I didn't even know if they could get the stuff, right? They're just in line waiting to get something limited. You're waiting 2 hours, and you
maybe get something.
Don't know if you can get in, right? Don't know if you get what you need. And so we've implemented some ticket system where as you go around the line, we say you're looking for this or that, and if they're looking for something, we can give them a ticket that reserves that for them. Yeah. And so hopefully by doing that, their experience got a little bit better, and so hopefully their interfacing with us got a little bit better, and just try to move that along every step of the way. We try to do that in everything we do, and that can actually be challenging. It can be exhausting, but it is in our culture. It is in our vision. This year, that same line, which was still long, what we try to do is we try to say, is there anything we can do for people that are in line, because we we open up twice as many registers to make it go faster. We also created a game. I don't know if you saw that. We had an actual card game that we made just for Gen Con that people could play while they're in line. We thought that would be
something to do.
We thought that would be cute. That's originally how Magic was conceived, right? Yeah. I mean, when WotC first, or Peter Atkinson first conceived of a Magic game, he thought it would be something that people would play while in line at Gen Con.
Yeah.
Really Richard Garfield obviously came up with Magic, but Peter's idea originally was, how can we get these poor waiting people entertained?
Give them something to do. That was back before we all had phones in our pockets, right?
And so, now with the phones, I was at the dentist this morning, and I was always usually bored there. Now I have a phone. Yeah. Now I can work, or I can I can surf, whatever. But always improve. I think is something that's important to us.
Yeah, I think it shines through. It's crazy.
Thank you.
One of the things I talked about was not taking the safe move, which is something historically, if you look back, I don't think you guys have done. Right? It's like you did Twilight Imperium, which was an expensive board game at the time.
Right.
And I think that pushed the envelope of what board gaming can be. And board gaming has changed drastically since then. You have the bigger boxes, but when you guys did that wasn't normal, right? And like looking back, it's like, oh, of course, a big board game, who doesn't want that?
Right.
But no one was doing it. So that's really cool. And then, things like the LCG. You invent non-collectible card games. And
there was other collectible, non-collectible card games. Well, before me,
of doing non-collectible card games in an awesome, like a very unique way.
Right.
Maybe one of the more unpopular decisions or potentially risky decisions that I'd like to talk about is Game of Thrones Second Edition.
Right.
Unpopular is the wrong word. I've talked to a lot of people.
With some.
Yeah, certainly some people not happy. So I'd just like to know what was involved on an organizational level. I mean, that's a huge decision, and I think a lot of people take it for granted that you guys it's a huge product line, Game of Thrones First Edition, and for you to announce a Second Edition takes a lot of product that you've already made, already printed, already selling, that you could have kept selling for 2, 3, 4 more years, and immediately says nowhere near as valuable, nowhere near as the number of people that are willing to buy it, right? Like if I know the game's starting over, I'm probably not going to buy 70 old packs.
Right.
So I think there's a lot. I'd like to hear your perspective on that switch and maybe the challenges that you guys faced and the scary parts of doing it, and then ultimately why you arrived at that decision.
Well, we can take a step back and look at how Game of Thrones started and what kind of meaning it has to us above and beyond just being a product. Yeah. We, on the basis of a recommendation from one of our staff members at the time, his name was Brian Wood, he recommended that we look into Game of Thrones as an additional product line because we were doing Lord of the Rings at the time. And we thought, well, what other great literary properties could we make games for? And then he suggested Game of Thrones. And I'm like, game of what? Okay. But I'll read it. And I did, and it was fantastic. Not a lot of gamers knew about it at the time. And so we talked to George, and George was thrilled, and we were, I believe, his first licensee.
That's awesome.
And we're very, very happy about that. And in fact, when we started talking to people about it, a lot of people didn't know what it was at all. And so we decided to partner up with, I think it was Del Rey or Bantam, that were actually the publisher of the novels. And we bought 1,000 paperback novels, and we wrapped them in the rules of the game, and we shrink wrapped them, and we sent them out with a demo kit to 1,000 game retailers and saying, "This is a good game, and believe us, it's a great property. Yeah. If you don't believe us, read this book. Here's a free book for you," because we felt that the source material was so strong. Yeah. And so that was also our first major collectible card game, or really we can call them customizable card game. The whole spirit you get from customizable card games, which we still make. We were really so thrilled with that game, and we had so many strong and amazing fans at that time that it really grew up with us, over the years, and so it means a lot to us. I mean, all of our games mean a lot to us, but this is one of the really special ones.
It's like Twilight Imperium. It's a legacy game.
Sure. I mean, it's particularly now when Game of Thrones has become so big. Everybody knows it's in the paper. I'm sure your mom knows what it is, right? Or my mom knows what it is, which is amazing.
My mom definitely knows
we sort of felt that that we have some stake in the soul of that whole property. Obviously we can't. George probably disagrees, but we really feel that this is something that we helped in our small way, but become a major thing. And so we really feel strongly that this is something that's special. When it comes back to the game, the game went through a number of different iterations, and we learned how to make games slowly. In those early years, there was a collectible game and blind buy, booster packs, and all that stuff. Blind buy games were going through a really difficult time in the middle of the last decade, and we had to figure out how do we keep this game alive. And I think I explained this in our last interview, so this is a nice repeat. But we had the same experience with the Call of Cthulhu card game, and we had made these asylum packs for the Call of Cthulhu card game. And we actually made those asylum packs because we had to cancel that game, but we still wanted to provide product to the fans.
Yeah.
So we took a strip out of the press forums of Game of Thrones, which became these non-collectible packs, or just fixed extra expansion packs for Call of Cthulhu. And they were hugely successful. People just really buy them, and it was great. We were selling out of these asylum packs. We could never sell the booster displays, and so there was kind of an awakening. And then, of course, to save Game of Thrones, we sort of felt that we had to do something different with it. And the problem that we had then, and now 6-7 years later, when we're making another change with this game, is that there's a certain number of our fans, and we love them all, a certain number of fans who believe that the game should go in a certain direction, and a certain number of fans who want a different direction, and a third number wants a whole different third kind of solution. Yeah. And so there's really nothing that you can really do that would essentially please everyone. Sure. But we want to please everyone if we can. But in lieu of actually being able to do that, I think we have to do what is best for the game in the long run. And I think there was a slide that Michael showed, which sort of comes to the heart of it. We've had 10, 12 years of Game of Thrones now, and we want it to be another 10, 12 years of life for that game. So how are we going to do that? Yeah. So we're looking at Game of Thrones, which has been the LCG, which has been very successful. We're starting to actually explore some of the boundaries and give us some of the lessons of what our LCGs do once you hit that card count, once you hit that pack count, once you realize that was a game that was actually made as a CCG, and because we didn't want to upset certain minority groups of players while we did the LCG, we kept certain game rules and certain aspects of the game, which in hindsight we probably shouldn't have, but we did that to try to make sure that everyone was happy, or as many people as possible were happy. And then over these next 6 or 7 years, we kind of realized there were a lot of things that were added where make the game maybe more complicated and less player friendly, and that's particularly new player friendly than it really could be. Because the core aspects of Game of Thrones are really simple. When we first launched the game, we were able to put the rules in like one sheet of paper. Yeah. It was a little the font was small, but it was one sheet of paper back both sides. And now it's sort of certainly outgrown that, and it can be quite intimidating. One of the issues, for example, was the timing system. We were not experts at card game timing systems when that game was put out, and what happened was there was a number of timing issues with that I actually personally repaired. Because there were cards that were talking to cards that are already dead. Well, if this card talks to a card that's already dead, then it must not be quite dead. Yep. So there must be a state in between life and death, and this is where the Morbin concept came up, and that solved a lot of these problems that the game had. But nevertheless, it was something that was evolved after the game came out. A very fair point is we should have known that. We should have put the game out if it had problems like that. But this is where a lot of games end up. You discover issues as the game becomes a game played by the public. So there's a lot of things that certainly could have made this game a lot better. And as we were facing other issues with the LCG, such as having too many SKUs for the retailers really to conceivably carry. You guys are a retailer, then you're having 70 some odd SKUs. Just keeping track of what is in and out is a problem. Getting the space is a problem. And there are certain people who would say that a new player coming into this may feel that that's just too many SKUs. I have some differing views on that, because I believe that having a game that looks like it's tremendously supported is also a positive. Yeah. It's like going I personally, when I go into a bookstore and I look for a new cool novel, if I see there's a big novel and there's other novels in the series, I'm probably more inclined to buy it than if there's just one. Yeah. So I think there's some people who feel one way and some people feel another. But nevertheless, there were issues with legacy game mechanics in this game. There were issues with the expanding card pool literally getting too big, not necessarily for the SKU count, but just because there's been too many cards. And since no card ever is really removed from the cycle, that you're ending up with having to design cards that have to take into account this whole pool. So we had to have a decision, sort of saying, if we want Game of Thrones to live a very long time, what do we do? This was not a quick decision. We thought of this for years. I mean, you have probably known people that have been arguing for rotation, for example, for years. And we're saying, well, this is really what I want to do. This is really the right thing for the game. We deliberated on this pretty heavily for a long time because we did not want to make the decision, impulsively that we would just do this. And ultimately, when we decided on rotation for the LCG format in general, we wanted to make sure that it was something that was well thought out. It could be applied against all games. And our wish was really that this is something when we do a new LCG, people in advance of buying into it know how the tournament format is going to go. The other thing when you deal with these kind of advanced issues like rotation, you're really talking to an audience that cares about tournaments, right? And so we have different audiences, in the game. I mean, the Game of Thrones LCG as it currently stands has a lot of awesome experiences in there. There's lots of cards. There's a lot of awesome gameplay. And so when we talk about rotation and we talk about the meta, we talk about going forward, that we're actually focusing on tournaments specifically. As we were to make this decision and look at rotation for Game of Thrones, we were saying, well, Game of Thrones has actually so many cards, and for the rotation to make sense, we would have to cut deep, and it'd have to be a very deep cut. And if we got to cut that deep, would it not make sense to actually reinvent this thing and make it the way that it really should have been, and that we have learned now that it should be? And that's where we talk about a brave decision. It's a decision that would not please everyone. It's a decision that did not come lightly, but a decision that I feel, and I think everybody at FFG feels, was the right decision, even though it's not the easy one. Some people will argue that it was that it's some sort of a profit grab or a money grab. But I can tell you that the department that least wanted this was our sales team. They had a perfectly fine selling product, that with lots of SKUs, and it was going, well, why would we mess that up? Why would we risk that? Why would we do that? And the idea here is that we want to do it because we want to produce the best game possible. And so how do we then announce it to everyone? Well, we announced it at the show. And we did it with a 10 to 11 month warning, saying this game is not going to come out until X period of time. So you have time to sort of react to that as a retailer. You have time to react to that as a gamer. And we also wanted to make sure that the current fan base was not just overnight left unsupported. And so we could have easily have just not put out the Warden cycle, which is the last cycle for Game of Thrones, because we made this decision way before then. But we wanted to make sure that the players of the current edition of the Game of Thrones LCG had a more or less a complete experience. Yeah. So we could put out another cycle of cards where, with the knowledge that this would be the last, that we could hopefully create some sense of closure within those packs that would make a more whole experience of the first edition. So anybody who has a first edition who is mad at us or who for some reason don't want to take the next step with us, I really feel there's a great game. There's a whole amazing wealth of experiences and product and art and stuff like that in that first edition, and you can argue it's complete. Yeah. But making decisions are not easy, because if we had decided to not rotate or not do this, we would have ended up with people that are unhappy on the other side, saying, why didn't you deal with Moribund? Why didn't you deal with the confusing draw cap? Why didn't you do these things? And so there really isn't a way for us to make a decision that's not going to have some portion of the audience be upset. We wish that was not the case, but that is the case. And so when in doubt, our view has always been do what makes the best game, do what makes the best experience. And it was very clear to us that a new edition that made the game the best it could ever be is the right thing to do. It was not done lightly. It was not done, sure, at the spur of the moment. And it was not done quickly because, the LCG has been around for multiple years now. I believe it's almost 7 years it's been out, 6 or 7 years. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. So obviously it wasn't done very quickly. Most games out there are never supported beyond 2 or 3 years, and here we have a game that's supported for 7 years, right? So it was a difficult decision, but I believe that the right choice was the brave choice, which is do what's going to make the best game for the future, and that's what we did.
Well said.
Is that okay?
Was great. No, that was great.
All right.
Nice.
Good. I'm glad.
So that's talking about Game of Thrones, and whether you agree with the decision or not. I think it was definitely a brave decision. Very excited about the second edition of the game.
Yeah.
And you talked about rotation a little bit there.
Yep.
And I think the safe choice probably would have been just implementing the same rotation policy to Thrones, cutting out the first 6 cycles,
Right.
7 cycles, doing.
It's a lot of cycles to cut out.
Yeah, it's a lot of cut.
Yeah.
But that would have been really safe. You would have still had a lot of product. You could have made the cuts in a year.
Right.
But you're essentially reinventing the game and fixing. Because people might have a problem with it resetting, but there's a larger group of people that have a problem with how complicated the rules are and how big the card pool is that aren't playing the game.
Well, Nate, who's the lead developer on the game, who came in, he's been a great number of years now, maybe 7 years, and he really is probably the biggest champion for Game of Thrones there is. He came forth almost at the same time that I felt that we should do a new edition, and he says he wants the game to feel right again. Because the game felt a certain way, and it was wonderful. It was great. It's what built everything it is today, and we want a whole new generation of players, or the same generation, or the same players that we have now, to feel that way again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right thing to do in the end, despite some of the pain that this decision may give to a few of the gamers, and which we regret that they may have wanted things to be different.
Sure.
But.
Well, I think we interviewed him, and he talked about some of the houses were doing things that didn't feel correct.
Right.
Whatever. What would they do in Thrones? And
right.
When you guys first put the game out, I think there's something that's worth noting is 2001, 2002 with the CCG, the third book had just come out.
Yep.
Around that era.
I think it came out. I read the first book before the card game came out, so it must have been right after, maybe a year or so after the third book came out.
Yeah. And so we've had 2 more books since then. We've had a
right.
TV show, and we've had
right.
The World of Ice and Fire, and we've just so much more information from George. So I'm really excited to see where the game goes in the future.
Yeah, me too. Great. It's going great places for sure.
That's Thrones. You talked a little bit about rotation.
Yep.
So let's talk about that.
Yep.
You decided, you have the LCG format. You've learned a lot of things, and
right.
one of them is you're going to have a rotation.
Yep.
Consistently cutting out products you've already made.
Right.
What was behind that decision, and what ultimately led you guys to choosing that style of rotation?
The point of doing this rotation is obviously for to improve the tournament play experience for these games.
Okay.
So it's done for the people who want to engage in a very competitive experience. It's done to keep a card pool fluid for those people that would be dynamic, that it would be exciting to play, where certain combinations that dominate the environment will have a lifespan to them, an expiration date, it is something that I think has been tried and true with other similar games, that you sort of need that level of life to constantly shift that environment to make it exciting and not stale. And it's also important to us that we try to do it in a way that was transparent and a way that was equally applied in all these different games. So we do with Netrunner, for example. I think the first rotation will, at the earliest, happen sometime in 2017. That's a number of years out. I mean, this gives you a clear signal to when is this going to happen. If you get into Netrunner now, you understand that is a time frame for when the tournament environment will be affected by this.
Or if you get into Netrunner near that time.
Mm-hmm.
If you get into Netrunner near the time, you don't have to buy those cycles.
Right. I mean, so those cycles that rotate out, we would no longer stock. So they would no longer be available. We felt it's the best way to preserve a dynamic tournament environment for these games. And also, there's also other elements to it. As a retailer, you don't want an never-ending, expanding shelf space for these games. When we first started, Game of Thrones, there's an argument that could be had, like, why didn't you think of this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a luxury problem for us because we could never hope that this would do so well. We could never hope
most games don't live that long.
It would live. I mean, not even close. Yeah, so that it would live to live that long, that we have this problem now, is of course great. But now we are faced with the dilemma of having lived that long, certain warts and issues occur, and how do we deal with them? And rotation for a tournament situation, the rotation we've decided, and I think very sensibly so, that is the best situation to create a thriving, healthy, dynamic tournament environment. For Game of Thrones, it's going to have that same rotation policy. It's just going to have it on the basis of the second edition. And so the Game of Thrones second edition policy really is, while it may seem similar because they're revealed at the same moment, they really are two separate issues. The Game of Thrones second edition is there to make the best possible game that we can have. And right from the get-go, you'll know there'll be a rotation as we start moving out the packs. But it's going to be 3 to 5 years until that rotation actually kicks in. And by instituting rotation now for Conquest, for Netrunner, and so on, we build in a system where we don't have to do a reboot for those games, because now we have that environment solved.
Yeah, it's way more sustainable.
It's sustainable. It's transparent. It's for everyone. Not everybody agrees with it, and that is a shame. I totally understand the concept of why would I have a problem with rotation, and why is it a problem that I have these cards that maybe later will not be able to be used. Unfortunately, that is one of the things that we have to weigh against the benefit of having a positive tournament environment. Now, people who don't play tournaments, of course, those cards are just as valuable to them as they were before. They work the same. Nobody crawled into your house and took them. And like I said, this edition of Game of Thrones, particularly with the Warden cycle coming out, could really be seen as a complete, organic, wholesome final game that you can play. And the fact that there's a new edition, new cards coming out of it, it's just great. If you love it and you want to move on to that, that's great. Otherwise, you can stay within that ecosystem.
And you mentioned something. Is it the plan that once a cycle has rotated out, that it would no longer be officially available?
We would not reprint them, because then I think a lot of retailers would feel an obligation to keep them in stock, and we have to make sure that one of the key things about LCGs is that when there's a pack that you can play, that it's available, you can find it, that we keep reprinting it. I mean, even though we might be out of stock from time to time of certain packs in our LCG line, we're committed to getting them back. The whole idea of an LCG is that it is a customizable card game, and if you want a card in your deck, you know where to go get it. Ultimately, and that has a lot of benefits. It was never the idea that an LCG, nor was ever communicated, that an LCG would never have a changing environment, or that there'd be cards that would be restricted or that would rotate out. I mean, that was never something that we felt was a must or something for that format. We had to see where the format would go. The fact that it's gone to a place now where we have to make decisions is really a testament to the games and to the players. I mean, thank you for bringing it to where it is today. And really, from the bottom of our heart, if you didn't agree with the decisions that we made on some of these things, we get it. We had to make a decision, however, that we think would be best for the greater community and for the games moving forward. And that is what we had to do.
I think that's fair. So speaking of decisions people may not agree with, and this is a big one. The internet is a wild place,
right?
And there's a lot of people on it with a lot of different opinions. So,
and that's good.
It is good. Diversity is good. And gaming in particular is a very diverse community.
No doubt.
No doubt.
No doubt.
So I want to talk for a second about FFG and their community and how they interact with their community.
Right.
And, when you have a community, you guys have a community that's growing very fast.
Yes.
You have a lot of very popular games with a lot of very diverse people, a lot of very talented people. And sometimes those people build their own tools, build their own things, build their own customizations.
I know where this is going.
Yep. And, there's a lot of, this particular issue, there's a lot of discussion on it, especially online. So I'd be curious to get your take and FFG's stance. And it's something that I think you guys are working on to be a little more forthcoming and out front about. But I'm talking about Netrunner DB.
Netrunner DB, yep.
And really any community-created, driven tools for these games, or obviously it's a database deck builder kind of thing.
Yep.
With all of your cards on it, all of
right.
your assets on it.
Right.
So I would just be curious to get your, as the head of the organization, get your take on that.
Good question.
Long question. I'm sorry.
That's a bit long question.
Long lead-in.
I'll probably have a long answer for you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I'll start a little earlier than the Netrunner DB situation. When 2 or 3 years ago, we noticed how amazing that the website Card Game DB was. And some of our own guys were using it, and people out there in the communities were using it, and it was a tremendous tool for everybody. And we're very pleased about that. Drew Dallas, who owned that site, had contacted us for permission, and we had placed various restrictions, on what he could not do, and he had faithfully adhered to those. And we were just excited to see people using it. But at the same time, it was so used at that time that we were a little concerned, because what if this site would go away? What if Drew, who's just a good guy, decided that he liked another game better and could no longer maintain the site? Well, that would be a loss to the community, because they actually that they were starting to use it in a major way, particularly Game of Thrones at the time. And so we decided that how could we salvage this tool so that something that people relied on would not go away overnight, because that would damage the community. So we went ahead and negotiated with Drew to purchase that site, and that had nothing to do with us thinking that there would be some magical pot of gold at the end of a rainbow of a database site.
Sure.
That wasn't really the idea. The idea was that this was a great site that people use. We want to make sure that it didn't go away overnight, because
it could.
It could. I mean, we would have no opportunity to save it. It wasn't ours. It wasn't anything we had influence over, other than just approving some core concepts to it. So, of course, with the technology and talent out there, some people make sites that are better or different or arguably better, and some people like to use more than others. And in general, a lot of people ask us, can they do this or that or so on. And generally, we're very receptive to this. So in terms of Netrunner DB, it gets a little bit tricky, because first of all, there's a number of issues that we have with that site, and there was never any permission asked to do some of these things, and so we asked, which you have to do when you have a problem. We asked it to be some sort of a negotiation or some sort of a discussion with this, and we are still in a discussion with the owner of that site, and so it's not up to me right now to sort of come out and present a passionate opinion one way or the other. Sure. Now the fact is that the owner of that site has chosen to do so differently and present his opinion to the public. That's his call, but I don't think it's in our best interest to go out and communicate this loud and wide and defend our actions and so on, because we want to make sure that if somebody else comes along in the future and we want to talk to at that level, that they can feel secure that we're not going to go out and sort of take our mission or our opinion to the public.
Sure.
That it should be something that could be kept privately between two people who may have a disagreement and try to work it out. What happened was that there was in the card game Netrunner DB issue, there was a decision on the other party to just overnight remove this site, which I think illustrates exactly why it's important that there's some problems when a site becomes very, very important to the community.
Yeah.
In this case, we looked like the bad guys, because it was a site people used and was taken down because there's some long-term issues that we have with it, and so it's really unfortunate. But at the same time, the damage to the community, I think, shows our concern about what can tools like that do to the community without some sort of a supervision or some form of collaboration or some form of understanding. In particular, this site continues to and has a series of APIs that extend to other sites, and people showing cards and people doing other things. So in fact, there's a number of different organisms out there that were surviving on the basis of one site, which makes it even more of an issue. And so it's very difficult. It's very difficult to say that you're a fan and that you've done some great work that people love, and that we have some problems with it, because at one hand it could feel really heavy-handed. Yeah. On the other hand, there may be some reasons that we have that really comes down to protecting the community, not hampering it. Yeah. And that may be difficult to understand. And there are other issues as well, and maybe not on Netrunner side, but we also have certain obligations to partners of ours, whether it be game designers or whether they be artists or licensing partners for IPs.
Like the Netrunner.
For example, we have to do a certain amount of protection, in this case, there's a number of issues, and we're hoping to work them out. And there's been some conversations, and it's not concluded as we speak. I am hopeful that it will have a conclusion that'll be positive. Yeah. But I hope you understand that going on and presenting this in a very hostile or defensive way is not really the right thing to do for us, and so that's that's a story right now with Netrunner DB. On the other hand, there are certainly things that we can learn and improve from, and probably the main issue here is the way that we communicate. Like you said, what are good barriers to what can and can you not do if you want to, as a fan, contribute to the community online. And we could do a better job of communicating that. We could have a better job of having a set of guidelines. And we're working on those. Those are not easy to do because we have to be considerate of not only Netrunner, for example, we have to be considerate of the whole category of products that we do and try to do something that is well thought out and it's done in a way so that there won't be lots of ambiguities and changes and retractions and all these things that cause even more damage, I think, in the long run than maybe saving it over the next couple of months by doing something fast. Yeah. And so we're working on that. We should have something up and ready for that within the next couple of months. Keep in mind, in this case, we also have to be concerned about other parties that are interested in our games, whether again be licensing partners, authors, and so on, to make sure that whatever we allow is something we truly can allow. Because sometimes it's not our call to whether you can use some other Star Wars image or Lord of the Rings image or whatever. There's a number of restrictions that we have to oblige to as well. And so we can do a lot better job of communicating some of those guidelines to everyone, and that's in the end I think has been the biggest issue at this point. And hopefully we will get those up soon, and that will resolve this. Does that make sense? Pretty long answer?
It makes sense.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about what he said?
No, I think that's pretty clear cut.
Well, that was a great answer.
All right.
That was a well thought out answer, and it's interesting, and it's another one of those quality problems that you guys seem to run into a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which is massive community, lots of talent, lots of people who want to help, want to do certain things.
For sure.
And it's again, going back to the very beginning of the conversation where it's this constant improvement,
Right.
And it's coming through because you guys are going to put together terms of
We
how you want
absolutely
people to
are. We
interact.
absolutely, yeah. It remains an area of improvement, and we'll get there. I hope that the first version of these guidelines are going to be great.
Hope
But
you don't get too
I would not be surprised if we have to adjust them in the future because some unforeseen technology or use or some use of our IPs that we have to protect may come up, and so it's always difficult. It's always difficult to be very inclusive, but also have to make sure that the community is protected and ultimately we're protected so we can keep making product.
Well, that's a good answer.
Thank you.
All right, so on to something not so thick.
Oh,
Or maybe thicker. We'll
give
see.
me more of the thick.
I want to talk about Star Wars.
Star Wars.
I'm a big fan of Star Wars.
Yay.
I make that
Me
pretty
too.
known. Yep. Most people like Star Wars. And I think you guys revealed Imperial Assault and Star Wars Armada at Gen Con this year.
We did.
And people are pretty excited about those, including
Good.
me. And I think what I want to talk about is, you kind of make some bold decisions with board games, Twilight Imperium, big boxes, high production values.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of reinvent a way of doing card games with the LCG model. And I see Star Wars, and the way you've handled that license, as a similar level of decision. And I like to talk about that because I feel like you're probably largely involved or responsible, at least for it. But what I'm kind of talking about is...
I should. When I say, I'm very involved in dreaming and envisioning and making decisions about what to do and providing the concepts. But there's a lot of really great people that are working on the details and how to come about. I cannot take credit for that.
Yeah, I'm talking more on a dream level, on a vision level,
Right.
Which is you've basically taken a Star Wars license and done something insanely impressive, in my opinion, which is, you could have just made safe moves, right? You could have made a card game that was an LCG and it was like the other ones, and you could have maybe made a miniatures game and like X-Wing, and you did, and it was nice. But you guys
It's very nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's a great
What
game.
are you saying?
I love X-Wing. I always call it the game that I have the most
game.
fun playing.
Good.
But anyways, you guys it's insane. You have this huge umbrella of Star Wars, and you're just putting out all the games all the games for it, and I just want to talk about that and how you guys are handling Star Wars, because that's a massive license, obviously.
It's true.
But what's the vision? Like, I feel like we're finally seeing the full vision.
Yeah.
Is this something that was laid down when you got the license, or like how does that?
We've been putting stuff out at a relatively measured pace, but generally speaking, as a gamer and as a Star Wars fan, we're putting out the games that always felt to be missing in the starry sky. There are these big empty holes where there weren't anything there, and it seemed such an obvious place to go, whether it's X-Wing or Armada or Imperial Assault. Imperial Assault, is being a miniatures game, and the way we're doing it, like by choosing a campaign and introducing the actual head-to-head for us, was the perfect mix of trying to get all the different genres in one box relating to the character-centric miniatures that we could think of. So we're really proud of that one. I'm really proud of Armada, and yeah, I mean, Star Wars is a major part of our blood. We wake up in the morning, we think of 1/3 or 1/4 of the company is Star Wars exclusively, and we're very proud of in particular when we got the license. So we have a vision for how Star Wars could be in the hobby. We think it could be something really special. We think hopefully we have the correct mix of execution and vision and the ability to love games and understand perhaps what excites a lot of gamers, and that we can put out a whole fleet of these things in a way that's never been done before. And I think you're starting to see that whole complete picture come about. We have more. There's more stuff, but that is to be talked about later. Obviously, we want people to enjoy, the meal that we present, and they can dream about future meals. But that is, of course, my responsibility is to think 2 or 3 years down the line about what's on the menu.
Yeah.
Because that's how long it takes to put together those dishes and go kill those cows and get those steaks aging for you.
I like that we got back to food. It's really impressive.
We talked about food earlier, by the way. You may have missed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive, right? And like, you're doing things that I've been around in gaming for a while, and I haven't seen before. You have, and it's one thing, I would imagine as a cost, it saves money, but it also, I think, is a huge benefit, which is you start seeing these amazing art assets across the games.
Right.
You may have the Darth Vader card, and then you have the Darth Vader art on the miniature version of the card, and the Darth Vader in the RPG book on the big thing. And it's like, it does a really phenomenal job of tying the universe together, where it's, this Star Wars universe that you guys are creating in your own way, in your own style.
Maybe our little take on it anyway.
Yeah, like your version of it.
Somebody else created it, but really.
You didn't create Star Wars. I don't want to say that.
Right.
But it's really impressive. So it's crazy.
Thank you.
I think every Star Wars fan is very happy with what they're seeing.
I think we ourselves, I know Steve Horvath, who sits right over here, our VP of marketing, is probably the biggest Star Wars fan ever. And we kind of have an easy audience. If we want to know whether something is exciting, we got a couple people to go, "Are you excited about this?" And if we have to wipe the drool off on the floor after we start talking about it, we realize we're on the right track.
Yeah.
So we have some pretty good internal gauges for what works.
That's awesome.
Within that context.
So now that we've kind of had our Star Wars segment, which I had to have,
there's a new movie coming out too.
That's also worth noting. Like, you guys, when you originally got this license, this was pre-Disney, right? So
pre-Disney.
You got the license. You started going to work on these. I don't know what you call that era of the universe, the original trilogy styled games.
At the time when we got the license, there really was no talk about any additional content at all, actually. There was some brief discussion about a TV series.
Live action.
And live action TV series, which was, I believe, later officially canned by the powers that be.
After Disney.
There was the Clone Wars series, were ongoing, but to us it wasn't so much. We wanted to get the license because of some great new shining thing coming out in the future. We believe in a lot of the IPs that we work on are their legacy IPs, that they have meaning. And they will have meaning in a long time into the future on the basis of what they are, not what they will be. Yeah. And so we as examples, as Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Sid Meier's Civilization, all these things that I think is going to last a very long time and have resonance and meaning with people, even though there's not going to be another Lord of the Rings book, right? It will still be a license that's going to have meaning with me and with others for decades decades to come. Yeah. And so we get into a license, we typically don't try to chase, whatever we think is going to be hot. That's very, very rare that we get involved in any sort of speculation. We all the time we're asked to, hey, we have a new movie coming out, you should do a board game, or you have this new computer game coming out, we need to do a board game. We are very, very selective about what we get involved in. Either sometimes we do things that are a personal passion, or even something that we think is just great, that in the end, because we think it's great and we think other people will share that, like Game of Thrones, for example. Or because we think there's something that actually is going to last longer than its 15 minutes of fame in the movie theaters or on TV. Yeah. And so you'll see us unfortunately disappoint a number of great licensing partners that want us to do all sorts of stuff, and we have to sort of say we can only do so many things, and we want to do them well. Yeah. Hopefully, when it comes out, you agree that they're done well. All opinions matter. But being able to do a selective series of things that make sense together is something that is very, very difficult, to orchestrate or over time, but is something I think we've done fairly consistently. And I think you can see the portfolio of products we have now. They all seem, fairly harmonious. Whether it's an Arkham Horror blending with, your Star Wars and your Lord of the Rings and your Game of Thrones, it sort of feels like, we're genre geeks, and we love it. And we love it, and that's where we want to be. That's awesome. That's kind of our identity.
Yeah, that's really cool. So Disney bought Star Wars.
Yes,
and that's exciting news if you're a Star Wars fan. Lots of movies,
we'll see. Yeah, I'm very hopeful.
Has that changed your plan for Star Wars at all? Like, what has that done? Like, obviously, new movies are going to start coming out, new content, new ships, new characters, new.
Yes.
I think at Gen Con you mentioned something about not necessarily doing anything prior to the original trilogy, but moving forward past that point. Someone asked a prequel question.
I think we've never said we will never do anything in the prequels, but I say that right now our main focus is to stay in that general universe and create our flavor of that particular era.
Yeah.
Now there's another era coming, of course.
What's your take on that era? Is that something
I can't say? I'm sorry.
You're good. No, it's fine.
I am very excited though.
Yeah.
What I've seen, what I've learned is that we're in for a real treat. I think it's going to be great. I'm really, really excited to be involved in the fact that we get this new life into the brand that we all love, like Star Wars. So it's
awesome.
Very exciting.
That's really
very
cool.
exciting. Did I answer your question, actually?
Yeah.
Or did we get kind of
You're fine.
derailed?
I don't even know what I asked. It's crazy. So I want to talk about tabletop gaming as an industry.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, Twilight Imperium, LCGs, how you're handling Star Wars as a license and going bigger than really, any license I've seen used in this industry. What would you say, if you were giving your take on and looking at the industry and maybe how FFG is going to interact with it, are there any known problems in the industry or known things that you think could be better that you guys might be looking to maybe reinvent? What problems do you see in the industry?
Not that I would tell you, man. When you say problems,
not problems, but
opportunities.
Collectible card games. How is there a way to do that different,
right,
or better, or more effective?
One of the things that we are really excited about, and that you're going to see us try to do a lot of different, try to put a lot of investment and a lot of resources into trying to do really well, is the notion of trying to create some games that have an electronic component. At Gen Con, I had a talk, and I showed a graph that illustrated how we think that electronic components, digital devices, essentially can be incorporated into our games to make them a lot more exciting and a lot more, we can get a lot more out of them. But there are some big pitfalls there. There's the idea that if you put in an electronic component for the sake of doing it, it could be basically a gimmick. Mm-hmm. Once you get into electronic component taking over, more of the game experience, you're really dealing with a computer game, and why do I have to deal with these physical things? But I really truly believe that there is something in the middle. We call it the discovery zone, where we can create some of these hobby game experiences that we have, and we'll have this device. In the past, somebody invented the sand timer for the first time, and time was invented and put into our games. And some people probably were like, "Oh my God, the sand timer! This technology is just disrupting our whole game experience." And I believe that it really isn't too difficult. Too different. That we can bring a type of technology that's fairly ubiquitous, and which means it's very inexpensive for most to introduce to the game, and it can do really amazing things as long as it doesn't get in the way or get in front or feel like that it's usurped the experience that we have with hobby games. And so that's one area that I really think is exciting. We put out the XCOM announcement. We're going to be releasing that game later this year as our first real foray into this new world. And we have a number of other projects on the way of that. It won't be all of our games. We still have only, just like we have a wide variety of different products, a certain distinct number of our products we'll try to take advantage of this. But I think you'll see some really great inventions coming out, hopefully from us, but also from others that really take games to a whole new level. I mean, what we're talking about in the R&D side of how we can improve our games and bring content and bring experiences at a very low cost to everyone via these devices and really help our hobby game experiences is so exciting. There are just things we can do that we just cannot do with paper, and not without a huge amount of messy operations with cards and hiding things, and generally having a much more difficult tactile experience that we can very smoothly integrate and create a really fun aspect to by using the electronic device. So we're very excited about how to approach that. We're very excited that we'll create some games people will really love, and we're going to try to introduce this in a number of different game categories.
That's exciting.
It is very exciting.
Well, I'm really excited about that. We could hold you here all day long and probably talk for hours.
Why don't we? Let's do it. I love this. It's great.
And we'll be back next year.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of those will either be out or announced, and we can talk more about the new innovations. And I'm sure you guys are going to change the game in those categories like you've done before many times.
I hope so.
I'm sure if someone is still watching this video, that they are.
Are you still there?
They are still here watching.
Are you still there?
If they're watching, I'm just going to assume that they're a tabletop gamer, and
right.
that they're probably a fan of one or a ton of the Fantasy Flight games. For that person watching, is there anything you would like them to know or hear from you, or anything you'd like to say to close this out, as a rare chance for them to interact and hear from you?
I'm not sure they can interact with me, though I wish you could.
Man, that's an innovation we're talking about.
I wish you
there.
could. Yeah, I wish you could. We are only as strong as our customers. We are only as successful as our customers make us. And we are so proud to where you brought us, and we are so happy to be the custodians of so many of the experiences. We hope that you understand that we're also human, and that choices we make you may disagree with, but we make them with heart, and we make them with a notion that we want to be here for tomorrow to make even greater experiences. We hope that you will continue to have patience with us when required, and we hope you'll enjoy the experiences that we deliver, and we hope you'll stay tuned to our website. And to your website.
I agree.
You guys do a great job.
I would love for them to stay tuned. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always, and we'll see you next year.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. See you guys.
See you guys. Bye-bye.